Okay. All right. There we go. Very. All right. Well, let me. All those who loved her best and were with her till the end will make the Mary Ellen Carter rise again. Halifax Wanderers 0, Pacific FC 1 at Wanderers grounds. The season is now over for us, and however, we can tell that the lads gave absolutely every single thing on the pitch today. Every single thing.
Left it all on the field.
They were blowing out of both ends at halftime. I could see it. I actually was there, thanks to a certain wonderful thing that I probably have been very obnoxious about. That is not a terrible idea for me. Plug over. So
your new mask.
Yes. Tell you.
Yes.
So yeah, this was getting hyped up like you wouldn't believe, and rightly so. It was the first non-round robin tournament style playoff match that we were a part of. Period. And
the first playoff game at home. So
yeah, the first playoff game was at home, and that was amazing. I'm glad we were able to secure it. It was a really interesting one. We had Halifax Wanderers preparing well for over a week or so, and we had Pacific FC who. It is my opinion that the state of travel in Canada, particularly for sports teams on a tight schedule, needs to improve significantly. You'd think there'd be integration of that with the schedules for say like hockey, but hockey doesn't go as this. NHL grade hockey doesn't go this far east, and the QMJHL goes as far as Quebec. So maybe it's not. I don't think they're asleep at the switch. I just think it is that wild. Blame the people who decide to grab like a whole almost half a continent's worth of land. Jerks. This is all their fault.
Air travel's a bit of. I was going to say air travel's a bit of a mess right now, but that travel schedule was rough for them. I understand that they were supposed to arrive at 10 in the morning the day before and didn't get in until 6 in the evening. So that's they certainly had a mountain to climb in terms of travel and jet lag. So.
But
they overcame that mountain.
And that's the thing that surprised me. They survived everything that a recently informed Wanderers side who were fighting like their actual lives depended on it. They survived all of that with that little prep time and some of the worst travel in the sport. Sheesh. After that, yeah. I seriously fancy them to go in and take the whole friggin' thing. I do.
The odds were. That's probably the toughest thing to take. I think is not only was it a home game, but we were facing an opponent that really got the rough end of the stick in terms of the travel schedule and didn't have much time to prepare for this match. And I think but at the end of the day, they got their tactics right. We didn't, and that was really the difference. I think was, I can't fault the players for the effort.
Oh, no.
Like you said earlier, left it all on the field, but it did feel like maybe they were, Merriman got his tactics spot on, and maybe we didn't. And that's not. I don't say that as a heavy criticism of the coaching team because as we'll be talking about later, I think they got so many of the big things right this year. That's just something. That's just a reality that happens sometimes. It's a bit of a guessing game sometimes with what your opponent's going to come out with and what you come out with. And we just didn't have the right approach for the situation, unfortunately.
They didn't, and the thing is that, so what can you say about the tactics? What tactical thing do you think was a mistake? Was there any sort of big bet that our coaching team placed and the house won?
Well, I mean, I'll start with what Pacific did. So, I mean, they kept things simple. They did not have a lot of time to repair, and so they went with kind of a 4-2 formation, which is one of your most basic formations. It looked like a 4-2-4 at times. So they had kind of two wide midfielders that were pushing forward a little bit up the wings at times, and really took advantage of the fact that they've got some real pace and quality down their wings, both their wing backs and their wingers. And so it was simple formation, very well organized. You could see two very clear blocks or lines of four players, and then you're kind of two very big men up front, and two big strikers, and they were very effective in kind of pressing when they needed to press, and dropping back into a low block when they needed to drop back into a low block and defend a little deeper. So just simple, well organized, smart tactics. And I think we maybe complicated things a little bit for ourselves. I was a little surprised to see Fernandez starting at left back again. I think the idea. Sorry, go ahead.
I said Fernandez at left back. I mean, I get that he was there before and he nailed it, but that says more about Fernandez in general than him at left back.
Yeah, I think we were going for a player matchup there. So I assume that it was the logic was the same as the Ottawa game. So the idea was that they've got a very speedy player in Kunle Dadalup down that side, and we were going to use Fernie to match him for pace. The problem is Fernie's right-footed, so right away, going down the left side of the pitch, he's at a bit of a disadvantage because he's not receiving the ball in an advantageous position. And you could see there was just a few times where he'd receive the ball and it took an extra second for him to turn and make the pass or what have you. So I think that maybe cost us a little bit. The other thing that was a bit odd was because Fernie was on the left and Jake Ruby on the right, we were using Jake as sort of the more attacking fullback, which is usually Fernandez's role. And so it just looked a bit off. I don't think Jake was fully comfortable in kind of that deep attacking overlapping position that Fernandez usually plays. I don't think Fernandez was fully comfortable in a left back position. It wasn't really until Weston Mateo came in and at left back and Fernie switched to the right side that we settled in, because Fernie was kind of playing as part of that back three, which didn't really seem to suit him, whereas Jake has played comfortably as part of a back three before. So I just don't. I think maybe that one was overthought a little bit, that they were trying to get a player matchup, and then as a result, maybe didn't have the right players in the right positions.
Yeah, and the thing is, even with that, Ruby individually was pretty good. I mean, there was a lot of joy that he got from his side of the pitch.
You kind of forget because he spent so much time injured, but he is actually a fairly pacey player. I mean, he's not as fast. He's not the fastest fullback in the league, but he is one of the quicker players on the team, and he can get forward. It just Fernie didn't look fully comfortable in the back three role, and Ruby didn't look fully comfortable in what's usually the Fernandez role of kind of the wing back that overlaps. So it didn't seem to suit us. And maybe cost us a bit in the first half.
Fern was less comfortable on the left side than Ruby was at the right, which is why my performance ratings gave Ruby a good and Fernandez was considered average. I didn't count the OG against that, because that could have been anybody, and I mean anybody.
Yeah.
He didn't.
No, there's no
fault on him there. He didn't deserve to have that bounce in off of him. When I saw that, I just this was my expression. And I just sort of sat down like I just witnessed something considerably more unsettling than sports usually allows for.
Yeah. it was a tough one because I mean, and obviously he, based on his post a little later, he was blaming himself, and it was nice to see the fans kind of step in and rally around and say, "No,
Right.
this isn't on you. You know, we win as a team, we lose as a team,
Yeah.
and that's the right approach." He was trying to do the right thing
Of
there,
course he was.
which is clear the ball out, because if he hadn't, it was getting to a Pacific player on the other side, and it was a tap in, right?
That was
So
it would have been a tap.
instead he knocks it in. You know, a couple of our other players were maybe out of position on that play, so it's no fault of his that he had to kind of step in and try to make that play, and sometimes they bounce the wrong way.
Yeah, it looked nervy, and there were plenty of Pacific players capable of actually scoring on by their own rights at the time. I believe Bahus was there. I think that was him. I didn't pay as much attention to specific Pacific players at all times, more our own, but
I
maybe
think it
that's
was, if I'm not mistaken, it was Adonijah Reed that kind of made the
Reed.
play to set that up.
If I predicted 3-1, and I figured Reed or either Reed or Saloof was going to get theirs because Reed's a hitter.
Yeah,
Reed is big damage, and so is Eamon Saloof. When I
yeah.
saw Eamon,
Saloof did come on late and kind of caused a bit of trouble for our backline pressing late in the game, but was maybe not as much of a factor. Reed had a great game, no question.
you betcha. Yeah, I know. Yeah, I'll tell you what. I mean, and as far as secondary stats, our secondary stats were ridiculous. I mean, you saw us. It wasn't like we were goal shy or afraid of scoring or like not really getting into the final third. We made their box a hellscape for large periods of the time. You saw it go off the crossbar
Yeah.
again. Goal line clearance like I think six times. It wouldn't have been surprising.
I mean,
And
yeah, a
Gazdov
lot of that,
channeling Lev
particularly in the
Yashin.
last. I mean, not that we didn't have any chances in the first 70, but there was definitely a lot more of that in the last 20. And that was a little bit of what was missing earlier in the game. Was we had possession, but we weren't. You know, you have 72% possession. You should probably have more scoring opportunities than we did. I remember last week on our graph, by Felipe from Coast to Coast FC, and he talked about us needing to start on the front foot and really try to get at Pacific early. And if you listen to Merriman giving us pregame talk, he talks about that they're going to come at you in those first 10, 15 minutes, and weather that storm, and then we'll get our chances to hit them on the counter, right? Which is pretty much what they did, and we just weren't direct enough for the first 70 minutes. We were getting our chances, but we just, there was too much passing sideways and backwards, which is partly a testament to them and disrupting some of our passing patterns.
They did rumble our passing patterns.
Sorry?
They did rumble our passing patterns a little bit. I mean, they knew we had the best passer of a football in the league. And I'm not blowing smoke. That's something one sucker had said too. But yeah.
But even Lorenzo missed a couple of passes, and
right.
They did a good job disrupting those patterns and forcing us to pass.
They knew what to look
backwards
for.
and sideways. Yeah.
Fair fucks. They knew what to look for, and with regard to certain players, certain high priority players, and they found a way to not necessarily pacify, but definitely limit them. Definitely.
The game did change. I mean, we got a bit more direct, I thought, when Timoteo and Peruzza came in to the game. That we started attacking goal a little more directly. I don't know if that's fully a testament to the change of the players. It might also be that Pacific was getting a little more tired at that point in the game. But we definitely, our best chances were in the last 20, and if we'd been getting those kind of chances on goal all game, I think we'd be having a different conversation here today.
We'd be having a different conversation. I'd probably have to delay this a bit more so that I could get the ridiculous cheering and pop-offs out of the way, while so that I could present a more humble, more objective account of things, rather than actually I kind of chilled out from that result, like even earlier than it took me to get back home. I was kind of pleasantly surprised at that. It's like I kept saying, and I said this to basically everywhere that I normally talk about Wanderers. It's like I speed ran the 7 stages of grief by doing the bargaining skip and clipping through the floor and then going right to acceptance. World record, 5 minutes.
Yeah, it took me about 24 hours, I'd say, to get over it. I had to vent a little bit first. Part of it, I think, as you know, was that was my birthday, and let's just say that from a sports standpoint, my birthday weekend did not go according to plan. Every single one of my teams lost an important match, and so that kind of put a little extra salt in the wound. But once I think it was the next day, really, when people started posting about the season and they're just being reminded of all we've accomplished this season and the distance that we've come compared to where we were last year, and that people were kind of thanking the players, thanking the coaches, thanking each other as supporters and people that cover the team and that kind of thing, that you started to get that good feeling back, right?
Right. I clapped them off at halftime, and so did just about everyone in 109. You bet your ass they deserved it. There were always 2 possibilities. I was highly confident that we'd come out ahead, ready to face Cavalry on the 21st. But because I always want to be mindful of hubris, I never ignored 2 possibilities. 1, there was a version of things where Pacific actually managed to do the business in spite of everything.
Yeah.
Because it's not like they're any stranger to awkward travel and the like. I believe they do. They have continental experience.
They're a very good and well coached team on their day, and they've been through a rough patch over the last couple of months. They seem to have found, when they started the season and they were tearing up the league, they were solid defensively and offensively. Still haven't really found their offensive form yet, but man, they found their defensive form again. That back four looked fantastic. Like you said, everything we threw at them, and they bent, but they did not break.
And this was a Pacific at like 30 or 40%. I mean, they were giving 100%, but they were at 30 or 40%. I think they're ready for continental play if they get that far.
They were content to let us have most of the ball. So it'll be interesting to see what they come out with next week against Cavs. The Cavs are obviously a very different team to play against than we are, and can probably match them a little better for pace.
They've absolutely.
And with,
Sorry, proceed.
No, just I was going to say, with both of them having a week to prepare, it'll be interesting to see what each of the coaches comes up with.
And Cavalry have absolutely moonwalked the league. So the next runner-up, Forge, was 12. I believe they were 13 points behind. And then we were also 13 points behind. And we've already gone through at length the tiebreaker situation. There are 2 governing forces in the CPL, chaos and parity. And that was definitely heavy on parity there. Tell you what,
though. As the players, the scary thing is that it looks like Playoff Forge is back. So I'm not sure I envy either team that comes out of next week's semi.
Right.
Having to go to Hamilton and play against an informed Forge is a big ask.
It's a big ask for anybody. I mean, let's see, the Forge.
Pacific's done it before.
Pacific took the whole thing.
They're the only team that's done it.
Forge.
So.
Pacific took the whole thing in 2021 against Forge at the Timbits.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's yeah the yeah, I think everything and more has been said about the afters near the end of the game. Do we just skip
Yeah.
that part so that we can get onto the season, or do you have anything to say about
No, not much else. I mean, there was some antics at the end of the game that you don't like to see. Like, I get that it was an emotional moment for the Pacific players and they were happy to win, but they did engage in some time wasting at the end of the game, and there was some, and they got, I think, quite rightly booed by the fans for it, because it was, I think we've all seen a bit of time wasting, and this was time wasting on an epic scale I've never seen before.
that?
And the response from the players was a little less than sporting. I'd like to see a little more. I could take the loss. I'd like to see a little more of a sporting approach from their team. I was not impressed with the 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 disrespect that was shown to the crowd at the end.
In the interest of fairness, we're obviously Wanderers fans,
Yeah.
and we don't even try to hide our bias because that's who we are. We hang with
No.
Wanderers. But there are two things that I know any other fans would tell us, and we already know and we've already acknowledged. Our football
Yeah.
club employs one Yannick Alexandra Fillion, Esquire, and he is and his cramps are legendary.
Oh yeah.
And
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
uh, two, the KDL's thing was KDL got done up on the similar sort of laws of the game, similar sort of sanction to Callum Watson for similar activity. Similar, not with you remember Callum Watson's two-gun salute when we got the winner there in front of the away box. Yeah, I mean the away players box.
Yeah, I mean, and again, I'll probably get accused of being biased here, but like Jan does a bit of time wasting, no question. It's usually, my impression is it's usually more about relieving pressure than actually running time off the clock at the end of the game. So it's often mid-game in sort of a pressure situation. But he does it once a game. This was 4 or 5 players, some of them doing it repeatedly. So he was excessive. I think we can all live with a little bit of time wasting, but this was excessive. And at the end of the day, what Cal did was to the opposing bench, so he was getting into it with the opposing players, which is fine. It's when you start having negative interactions with the fans that you got to question what you're doing there. You're a professional. Keep your focus on the pitch. That's all. That's really all I wanted to say about that.
Right. Okay, there we go.
I mean, on the plus side, I think it does show that we were in the opposing players' heads. So you can take that if you want to take that as a positive away from it. They should be able to shut us out. Is the other thing. And so the fact that the players were responding to the fans in that way shows that maybe they weren't able to shut us out quite as effectively as they might have liked. So save that for another day.
Okay. So those are the parallels that regarding some of the afters. Yeah. Anything else you want to say about anything? Is there anything else you want me to ask me about with regard to this game, or should we move on to the season? I believe that time elapsed is 24 minutes.
Well, I was curious, Jordan, like, what was it like to be back? Because, I mean, obviously you haven't been to a match in a while for very good reason. So what was it like for you to be back at the grounds after a bit of a hiatus?
It was huge. It was,
yeah.
I felt it. I was very much like, it felt like getting into, it felt like getting into the pool, or into the water in the beach. Like after the first day of the summer, or the first day that you get on the beach, not at all having been yet adjusted to the temperature there, and just like knowing you're going to go in there anyway and bracing yourself for it. And I was talking at length with a couple of Wanderers fans that I didn't know from a hole in the ground on the bus ride there. I was I was I was arranging things with Trip Forks, or rather arranging that, letting them know I'll be sitting in 109 with them. I ended up sitting in another part of 109 in the second half, and and then I went through the whole thing, and I basically took in the fact that, wow, I'm involved with history,
Yeah.
and yeah, and I saw the tifos, I saw the 108 Ultras Zelda thing, and I saw the One Piece, because privateers, pirates, and that was, and the Callum Watson Bush, like, that was cool. Uh, and it was just like, oh, this is really happening, isn't it? Holy shit. This
Yeah.
isn't a hypothetical. I joke to a lot of people that, yes, no, I am not a myth. I am not a disembodied voice with an internet connection. I actually am a guy, a human guy. And there were some, hey, hey, from everyone who recognized me. And I was basically looking to see who I could point out because there are a lot of faces I haven't seen. And I was hoping that there's some people I was hoping to see, but trying to pick out specific people without having arranged it in that situation is kind of like, especially when you're rightly averse to large crowds most of the time, is like needle in a haystack. I did end up getting all up in my feelings, and I may have said a few things in the Discord that weren't out of line, but may have been things I certainly wouldn't say or approve of today. Full disclosure, yes, I was. They were talking about the Atlantic Ottawa moment of silence. Jerry rightly said, "Yeah, that's kind of far. That's kind of a shit." And yeah, he was right. That's with the greater context of things, that might have been a bit shit, and not because it's a jinx. I jokes about jinxes. We say it all the time. It's obviously
Yeah.
trying to joke about that. It's not an actual thing. The thing of it is, it's just, yeah. I guess I and a lot of other people need to read the room there. Be that as it certainly was, I was also like sort of cheering like you wouldn't believe, even with the name, even with the name, the lineup names. I was
Yeah.
responding to all those like you wouldn't believe. That it basically, like, I was just carried by it. I took a few short videos because I made the mistake of not really not fully managing my storage space on my phone like I needed to. I did manage my battery life, but that battery went to crap anyway, I guess, because of things that happen when it's windy out.
I'm
Yeah.
glad you had a. I'm glad it was an enjoyable
It
experience,
was an enjoyable
despite the result.
experience. And like I said, the result was, I was obviously upset at the result. I near the end when there was extra time, and then extra time because of Pacific somehow out Fillion. I I was sitting down a bit and kind of, I what the whole thing about watching from like this, yeah, like with my eyes peeking out. Yeah, it was kind of like, from my hand, it was kind of like that. I even like sort of like screamed. I even sort of like yelled like, "Oh my god!" near the end of it, and it felt like the full time whistle could go at any time, and I was like waiting for the inevitable. And when I saw and every time we went through on goal during our friggin' during like our during base what was basically our attempt at the charge of the Light Brigade, I was basically I was basically cheering like there was $1 million in it, and I was like scared. I was sort of like, oh shit, when it went the other way. Yeah, I just left there. I didn't really hang around. I just left for the bus, and just I just sort of mellowed out. I was like in my feelings in a big way for like 5 minutes, and I just sort of mellowed out and was kind of surprised I was that chill.
Well, here's hoping we make the playoffs again next year, so you can come out for another game.
I would love to see if we score in a playoff game and it's at the grounds and I hear it. I probably won't have a voice. I'll have to do one of these through like cue cards.
Yeah, it was. I mean, the crowd was popping that day. The main stand was on their feet, and had there been a goal, it would have been.
Had there been a goal, Tops,
you can only imagine.
Had there been a goal, I wouldn't be surprised if Tops flung onto the back ends behind the pitch, like an overexcited crowd at a rock concert.
Yeah.
Like,
do we want to move on to?
Yes, we do.
To the season.
Oh, entirely. I'd been watching it. Yeah. So, bad day, good year. Okay, not bad day. Bad final few minutes after full time. Good year.
Tough result. Good season. Yeah.
And the season was like, I mean, I forget exactly which records, but there were a frig ton of records that we broke, club records that we broke, positive ones, under Pep Gazziola.
Yeah, not just club records, but I think third highest home points total in league history, third highest home goals total in league history. So, I mean, certainly in terms of our home results, that was one of the better seasons in the league, period. I mean, they'd set that target of 30 points at home, and we fell just shy, but a pretty impressive record at home in particular.
Yeah. Our waveform was
obviously
poo.
Yeah, I mean, work to do there, right?
Obviously.
But I look at that and say that's room for improvement next season. Like, I still feel like with a slightly longer training camp, maybe a couple of those early season draws turn into wins. But there's room for improvement next year. We're not going to be dealing with 75% squad turnover. We're going to be dealing with maybe something more like 25% squad turnover. Right. And so a lot more time, people will now be familiar with our tactics and our approach, and we'll be able to do different things next year. So.
Right. And I know it's very likely that a couple of key players are going to bounce. And as far as and Nimick and Calgary, my two excellents on the list there, if anyone deserves a move on their terms, if they deserve an honorable discharge, it's Calgary and Nimick. I mean, those two were like best in the league type at what they do. Like Calgary with regard to key passes and practical passes, not just arbitrary ones. And Nimick, you were saying?
Sorry.
And
Nimick, go ahead, sorry.
Nimick's a center back, right? Sometimes I forgot he was a center back because he was everywhere. Actually everywhere. Yeah. He was
because it's one of the things we've really been missing the last few years is a truly modern center back that's capable of moving the ball both on the ground and in the air. We really haven't had that ball playing defender that's good on the ball and can progress the ball dribbling, but can also make those precision passes out from the back, and so that's something that he gave us that we really didn't have before. I mean, yeah, there's the risk that we move some players on, and gosh, if they go, they've certainly earned it. The thing that gives me hope on that front is obviously that the recruitment was excellent this year. Like you really have to look at, they had to rebuild the squad, bring in, I can't even remember at the end of the day how many total new players it is. Somewhere between 15 and 18 new players.
We basically had to turn the squad inside out.
And so many of them were home runs. Like, we're just solid additions. Very few misses in terms of the players they brought in, and it really goes beyond just Patrice's connections in the game in Ontario. Like, the guy has an eye for young talent. He seems to closely watch Canadians in the NCAA in particular, and seems to be fond of that route for development, and so was able to pick out someone like Dan Nimick, um, and Callum Watson, obviously, as well, and others that had NCAA backgrounds, and so I'm encouraged. On the one hand, you worry a little bit about how you replace players of that caliber, but by the same token, you look at the caliber of players they were able to recruit this year, seemingly from completely off anyone's radar screen, and so I'm confident that he's got we've got a team that can bring people in, and now that we're a playoff team, I think we become an even more attractive place to come.
Yeah, the next step from being a playoff team is being able to do things in the playoffs, and that's the next step. And if we manage to match or beat what we've done this year, I'd call that a success.
Yeah. What were some of your high points for this year, Jordan? Like, what are the memories you're going to kind of carry with you from this season?
Undefeated record against a Forge that the season prior basically used us as a training session, as a training round. A positive record against Ottawa, who did the same thing, and not counting the playoff game, a dead even record against Pacific, who, despite their up and down tendencies, are consistent contenders. I compare them to Dortmund. They sometimes they start out really strong and sort of fall off late, but they are consistent contenders. They always end up overall doing all right. They always get to the playoffs, at least pretty far. They haven't had a bad season.
Yeah, having sat through both of those home losses to Forge last year, that first 2-1 win over Forge was cathartic, to say the least. That was definitely a high point. One for me will also be, and it happened a few times, but just the way some of these new players embrace the club and the culture of the club. But watching, Dan Nimick, it happened after a few games. You go down to the supporters' corner at the end of the game, and everyone's there. The players come around, and Dan would grab the megaphone and start leading the crowd in a chant of "Come on, you boys in blue." So here's this guy who grew up in England, first year as a professional playing in Canada, and he's bought into it so much that he's leading the supporters in chants. I just, you love to see it.
I do love to see it. I mean, this guy, Dan Nimick, Big Kick Nimick, like I said, when I say Dan Nimick is everywhere, I mean it. In this case, including on the megaphone.
Yeah.
I even said as much in the game where it happened in a review. There's nobody I thought sucked overall. There were a few that that had struggled, but I wouldn't say there was anyone that sucked.
Oh. No, like I said, overall the recruitment was excellent. The caliber of players we brought in, we've talked about the fact that this league improves in quality year over year, and so every year, even the good teams have to get better just to keep up.
Obviously.
And so the teams that are struggling, it's really hard. It can be a real challenge to turn that around, because not only are you trying to get better compared to what you were last year, but the whole league's gotten better too. And so for us to go from seventh to third, that's a big, and just the quality of play we saw on display, that's a big step up. But I mean, I also get a kick out of the fact that the way some of the veterans embrace the club culture. I mean, you look at someone like Daniil Henry, who's obviously played for the Canadian men's national team. He's played around the world, Europe, Korea, various MLS clubs, and even he talks about the supporters and how much their support means. The sheer amount of personal messages that he got from people when he joined the club, and how different that was than anywhere else he'd played in what's been a pretty, illustrious career so far. So it tells you, it's a good reminder that we have something special here in terms of the club culture.
I know, and if we keep the likes of Peruzza and Henry, I think that they'll be able to improve too. I mean, yes, I've cracked the jokes about Jordan Peruzza's finishing and how I might end up getting a soccer ball in the delivery via air Peruzza's foot, but I there's definitely potential with everyone. At the very least, there's a lot of potential.
Well, I mean, they both brought very different things. I mean, Daniil obviously comes in, they come in around the same time, or in the same transfer window anyways, partway through the season. Daniil brings a lot of experience and leadership, and I think you could see how our very young backline benefited from that, and the mentorship and the leadership that he brought. And so it was about a lot more than just what he was able to do on the field. It was about what he was able to do for a very young defensive core in terms of teaching them the ropes, talking to them about different game situations and stuff like that. And so that was really important. Peruzza, I think people will point and say, well, he's a striker. He only got 2 goals. Again, he had to come in halfway through the season, have to adapt to a completely new system. What I saw that I liked, and others have pointed this out, was his work off the ball.
He never stops
his ability to make smart runs that draw defenders away and open up space for other people. So yeah, he got 2 goals, but I'd say he probably contributed to at least twice that many just through smart off the ball play and finding ways to create space for other players. And that's a harder thing to measure.
It's a harder thing to read for sure.
I would not. I think I said this on the Discord.
I think I did him dirty back in the day. I think I did him dirty. I think I did him dirty with some other stuff, just because I underestimated quite a bit, in fact, how that yes, you can be an off the ball striker. Yes, that is a thing.
Yeah, I think I would not hate to see him if we were able to get him on a full season loan last year.
And I apologize.
I wouldn't hate to see that, because I'd love to see what he could do with now that he knows the system, with a full season under his belt. I don't know whether that's a possibility. I don't know what TFC's plans are for him for next year, but I definitely wouldn't hate seeing him back in a season long loan.
His finishing will improve. I'm positive of that. He's in the right structure if he sticks around to improve strikers. I mean, look what the hell happened with Daniels is a cam, but Daniel is a forward player who has improved massively by I'm reminded of Abdoulaye Doucouré under Sean Dyche as opposed to under Frank Lampard. Same idea. Like under Stephen Hart, we didn't know what the heck Daniel's deal was. Under Patrice Geyser, we found out.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we knew coming in he was a good player. Like, you looked at his footage and you could tell the guy's got a heck of a skill set. And obviously last season was a bit of a disappointment, but I think it was partly just not having the right system and role for him. That once Morelli got injured, they tried to push him kind of into that Morelli role as the false nine, and it just didn't suit him, right? And so they have found a role and a place for him in this squad that works, and it's worked wonders. So it just goes to show you that the right, it's not even about player quality. Sometimes it's about finding the right role and the right system that suits that player's qualities. So,
and speaking of highlights, this was a highlight of the year by far. Ultima Danza, The Last Dance, possibly. I don't know. I hope we see more of them. But the Return of the King, the return of Joao Morelli. That was like that was like wow.
I mean, certainly. I think most of us had stopped hoping that he was coming back. And gosh, when he came back, it was it created a lot of excitement, and really unfortunate, obviously, that his season ended the way it did. And would love to have seen him in a playoff game at the grounds. I hope that he's that he makes a full recovery, and that he's if he wants his career to continue, that it continues here, because I'd love to see him back at the ground scoring goals again. But
the way I see it,
we'll wait and see.
The way I see it, Joao Morelli has definitely earned the right to dictate that on his own terms. Within reason, but you get the idea. I mean, for example, I didn't even begin to begrudge his absence from a squad he wasn't even going to be a part of, even if it was Wanderers history, because, I mean, the logistics are absolutely rattled. I mean, from Sao Paulo to Halifax with everything going on in his family life and the like, it was as likely as it was about a 50-50 split. Maybe highballing it, that he would have been able to do so even if whether he wanted to or not. And I don't know his mind. He figured, I mean, this season is over. We could see him tomorrow. We could see him next season. But if we don't, thank you for everything, Mr. Morelli.
Yeah, he's created a lot of good memories for us. I think I'm hopeful that we do see him back next season, but I guess we'll have to wait and see where his desires lie. So,
hi, and just to get out of the way, hi Bruno and hi Philip. Oh shit! Hi Bruna, hi Filippo. I was about to say Bruno and Filippo. What? No. That's embarrassing.
Say to his family.
Yeah. Hello and best
wishes. Any other highlights of the season for you, or
any other highlights of the season? Well, when we won our first game, we won it big time. I think it was against Cavalry or something like that. It was either Cavalry or Valor. I'll have to check.
Now you're testing me. We did have a 3-1 win against Cavalry at home.
And
that was our first one.
And this was Cavalry, who absolutely who absolutely tap danced the league.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we played Cavalry well this season. We were unfortunate not to get a result in Calgary due to a bit of questionable officiating, but it is what it is.
Yeah.
The first win was against Valor, and then followed shortly thereafter by a win against Cavs. But yeah, we got a 2-0 at home against Valor, and followed up with that 3-1 against Cavs. Again, another impressive stat, and I know this was one of the goals for the team this season, but we never lost 2 in a row, right?
That's correct. Whereas we did that all
difficult as that initial stretch without a win was, we also never lost back-to-back. So
another big highlight, the game against Forge, where it was clear that we were a playoff team. That, I mean, especially given the way it played out, and the way that basically we were 2-1 up. Forge rightly were fighting like hell, like we were. They were fighting like hell, just like we were in the playoffs, and it went about as successfully as we did on Saturday. And they even had this one last this that was Jan Fillion's double save, followed by another stopping like all kinds of shots. It was like it was it was it it they were making a tent in our box, and and Fillion and the defense weathered all of that. That was nice.
Any unsung heroes for you?
I have a big soft spot in my heart for Riley Ferrazzo. I believe I've said that. I believe I've given him excellence in games where some people would have looked at it and thought, wonder if I meant somebody, if I intended to say somebody else, or if I was watching an entirely different game.
I think Riley offers us something very different than what our other fullbacks do, and I think that's a good thing. Like, he's a very versatile player who can move around the pitch very differently than our other fullbacks do. I think that's something you want in a. I mean, is he a locked in starting 11 guy? No, but something you want in a depth player sometimes is a bit of versatility and a bit of unexpected movement that helps give you a different look. So I thought he was a solid addition. Mine was probably Cale Lockery. I think he got overshadowed a bit maybe by playing alongside Dan, who obviously had a stupendous season, but Cale sort of quietly came in as this guy that had been at Edmonton last year, had been on loan from Forge. I think at one point the thought was Forge would probably snap him up. They had used him in they even used him in one of their CONCACAF League games last year before shipping him out to Edmonton. And so, surprisingly they didn't. And obviously he had a previous connection with Patrice, and what a great ad. I mean, him and Dan formed a very effective partnership. And like I said, he got overshadowed a little bit maybe. And early on in the season, there was maybe a couple of gaffes, but he became sort of the default middle guy in the back three, and that involves a lot of cleanup. You're basically the last line of defense there, and when others have failed, and I can't remember too many times where that last line broke. He had some games where his clearances were excellent, and so great player who's maybe flown a bit below the radar, although it sounds like maybe he's starting to attract interest.
That's because his opposite partner is Dan Big Kick Nimick. That's like being that's like being Mariah Twain or or like, I mean, that's like being Clark Kent's neighbor. Or his brother, like Jack Kent or something.
Maybe a bit like the sidekick that gets overshadowed, but is a hero in his own right. So, anyways, great. Understated, but
definitely underappreciated.
But solid,
including by me earlier in the season. Like, I didn't rate the guy for quite some time, and then I suddenly did, like, a lot. Yeah. I'm very glad he's part of us. So there's that. So Omar is a mensch through and through.
Yeah.
He was one. He's been one.
I have nothing but respect for Mo. I mean, he does the things you want a captain to do. He is, he's thoughtful when he speaks. He's not afraid to face the media after a tough loss.
As we just saw.
I always enjoy talking to the guy. He's a thoughtful person to talk to. He sticks up for his teammates. He does the things you expect a captain to do. I remember him taking the ball away when Nimick had the penalty kick against Forge, that one in sort of the 10th minute of stoppage time, and Forge was doing their usual gamesmanship and trying to get in Dan's head, and Mo took the ball away, and so that the focus was on him and not Dan, and that was good, and sticks up for his teammates when he needs to. He's out of contract, and so I do think one of the big priorities for the team in the coming weeks has got to be sorting out his situation, and we have, of the players that played for us this year that were actually saw the pitch, almost everybody is under contract and option except Mo. And the other one they've got to sort out is Camilo Vasconcelos, who I'd love to see back as a U21. So I think that's kind of one of the things the club needs to prioritize in the coming weeks is I'd love to see Mo back, and I'd love to see Camilo back as a U21. So hopeful that
this kid came on in his first game and against Valor away, and he played like he'd been there for years. Okay, that's maybe not, but he played like he fit right in. He there was no hesitation. He chased
and they
after.
tried to put pressure on him. You saw a few times where they had 2 or 3 players on him to try to, and he played through it. And so, he had great poise and was obviously thrilled to be out there. And he loved to see an 18-year-old enjoying his football and being able to play with the big boys. So
you see a lot of eager 18-year-olds try and do something ridiculous. Like say off tank, like say pull at tank and pull aggro from like three defenders. You don't see someone doing it that successfully on their debut that often, do you?
Yeah. No, so a very promising debut. Obviously the coaching staff have seen more of him than we have, but if we can judge by that, I'd say bringing him back as a U21 should be a priority.
That would be beautiful. And I would like to see them. I'm not sure what form this would take, by the way, but I would like to see them improve how they handle youth minutes, because it looked like the kind of thing where it doesn't really fill its intended goal as needed. I'm not going to say it's too easy to game the system, because guess what the hell we did for the past few games. I mean, that'd be rich coming from us, but that's also a common issue for a lot of folks, including people who made their minutes a long time ago.
Yeah, it's interesting because when you watch coverage of the league from outside of Canada, and Fox being one of the networks, but they really like this idea of the U21 minutes rule, that it's great in terms of player development, that kind of thing. The reality, the practical reality is,
the intent is quite
for most teams, it's usually one player.
It's the execution
that
does work.
Yeah, it's usually one player that's carrying most of the minutes. Now, they've tweaked some things in the past couple of years that maybe make it a little more attractive. Be interested to see what this exceptional young talent rule changes how teams start approaching development of U21 players. They start signing them younger before they become to do a full contract, as opposed to the U18 development contract, and then bring them back. Maybe that changes things. I think people have made arguments that maybe the age limit should be raised, because when you're in a league where one of your primary pathways is university and college, and guys aren't coming out of that till they're 21, 22, maybe there's an argument to raise the age to 23. But I don't think it's a requirement that should be done away with entirely. I still think it does serve an important purpose in terms of putting emphasis where it should be in a development league on developing younger players. And so the debate might be about the right number of minutes, the right ways to hit the target, whether the age limit is the right one. But I think the rule itself makes sense.
Yeah. And I wouldn't surprise me if there were fundamental changes to how the league does certain things made in the off season. Uh, like that, they might end up tweaking the playoff format personally. And if I've got the wrong idea, then I'm totally willing to hear it and rethink it if that is the case. But it wouldn't surprise. I wouldn't mind if we're going to have 5 playoff contenders out of 8, like to match say other leagues where it's a little over half. Other sports and other leagues, the playoffs have been open to like a little over half of the league's teams. Then I guess we could. One thing I'd like to see is the 4v5 game as a play-in, followed by 2022 system. Unless
Yeah,
that
you
would.
could do that. You could do that. I do think that when they first announced the new playoff structure, like I think I was as confused as anyone, other than curlers who apparently recognized it right away because I guess the page playoff format is pretty commonly used in curling. But once you saw how it worked in practice, I actually kind of liked it. Like I do like the idea that all of the top 4 teams get to host at least one game, and that there is a very real advantage to moving up. Each rung in the ladder that you move up has a distinct advantage. If you move from, if in a standard, the playoff format we had in previous seasons, if you moved from 4th to 3rd, you went from playing the first place team to playing the second place team away. So there was no difference. It was an away game against one of the top 2 teams. So it was going to be a challenge. Whereas if you moved from 4th to 3rd in this system, there was a very distinct advantage in terms of you got to sit at home and wait for 4 and 5 to beat each other up, and then hopefully take advantage. Now, unfortunately, we weren't able to take advantage, but I mean, it was a distinct advantage. And then you move up to 2nd, and all of a sudden you're into this knockout game, and you can potentially, or not knockout game, but bye game that you can hopefully host the final. So, it did really feel like there was distinct advantages to each rung on the ladder, and I think it did make the playoff race a little more entertaining at the end of the day. No one was kind of satisfied with settling for a spot. Moving up really had moving up each rung really had a particular advantage, and you could see teams really pushing for a higher spot.
Yeah, as I said earlier, there was always a version of things where Pacific came out on top in spite of it all, and there was always a version of things where Halifax would lose and deserve being clapped off the pitch.
Yeah,
and both happened. That's one. I just wanted to mention that because I'm not sure if I mentioned all of that. Yeah, but the thing about it is, regarding Pacific and everything they had to go through, 3 days, a midweek with that kind of travel, that's not. I mean, it would probably be worth looking at other issues and trying to tackle them, just to make sure that there isn't a situation like that again. I mean, geez. I mean, that
they might
like,
want to look at a longer break between the 4-5 game and the 3 game. I mean, I don't know how long you can stretch it without starting to seriously, either have to push regular season games earlier or extend the playoffs. But it's something to look at because it becomes a player health and safety issue at a certain point.
Yes, it does.
But, look, the fact that they came here and they pulled that off, I don't want to hear Martin Nash complain about the travel schedule again next year, because if Pacific can do that, then Nash has nothing to complain about.
I mean,
traveling from Toronto.
Right. That. I mean, I've already said at length what I think about Pacific, given the fact that they did what they did. So I won't repeat myself there, but I don't think the 4-5 should be a midweek game. And if there are difficulties involving there being 2 weeks of downtime for the 1v2 and 3v4, then I guess that's something to be to be looked at the end, and maybe they'll find a better way than I proposed. I mean, I'm not an organizer for this kind of thing. Maybe I'm talking out of my ass.
Could you play the 4-5 game on a Tuesday? Maybe that might be part of the solution. Then you've got two teams that are both coming off a Saturday game. They're equally tired, but they at least have a bit more time to recover before the play-in game on the weekend, right? So there's definitely different look at it.
Probably, yeah. And I guess I leave it in the league's capable hands.
Look, they came up with that format. They faced a lot of criticism for it at the time. I think in retrospect, a lot of us have had to eat our words because it did lead to a very exciting playoff race and a very exciting playoff so far. So I will leave that with them. I don't. Right.
It's in their hands.
I would prefer not to see a complete overhaul of the playoff format yet
not completely
after this season. So tweaks maybe, but I think the basic idea is correct, and maybe you make a few adaptations.
Okay. And another thing that needs to happen that really did have some gross consequences this year. The Can Champs needs to start like in May. June is a bit too late, but May, like mid-May, rather than perfectly parallel with the league, because midweek games aplenty at the start of the season, at the start of the season's amount of intensity. Frig off! I still can't believe that Halifax lucked out of the absolute injury crisis that created. And it's embarrassing. It's embarrassing that they should seriously adjust it, because we don't need another injury fest like we had, like the league and all the teams and so many teams had.
Yeah, it's bad from another number of standpoints. I mean, that early in the season to be playing twice a week when you're not really fully match fit yet, bad idea from a player safety standpoint. So it's bad from that standpoint. I think it's bad from a standpoint because you're asking them to spend more time in outdoor stadiums at the coldest part of the season, really, which isn't ideal, I think, from attracting crowd perspective or ticket sales perspective. Teams like us will pack the stadium regardless, but assuming we actually get a chance to host a game. But it's like the fact that it resulted in the absolutely ridiculous scenario of Ottawa and Halifax, the two teams with the best home support in the league, unquestionably, playing at York Lions Stadium,
either
where the support is non-existent, was criminal. It was just an extremely poor use of the tournament. The problem you've got to overcome is it's the MLS clubs that are pushing to hold it earlier because they've decided to prioritize the Leagues Cup. You've got this new expanded League Cup format, and you know what? Great, exciting tournament, but your domestic cup shouldn't play second fiddle to something like the Leagues Cup. It should be a premium tournament. It's got a slot. It's got a spot in CONCACAF Cup on the line, and the MLS clubs need to take it seriously. And if they don't, then maybe a bit of an ultimatum needs to be delivered there, because they certainly want that CONCACAF spot. Whitecaps wanted that CONCACAF spot, but they also want to push everyone around in terms of scheduling to get it to suit their schedule. There's got to be a bit of give and take there.
All right.
I was not impressed with how the MLS clubs pressured Canada Soccer into that ridiculous schedule.
That's a joke, and not the funny kind. No. Also, one last thing, and since our season is over, I feel a lot better talking about it. Officiating league-wide needs to be looked at in the offseason. They cannot waste this chance to improve something that is in dire need of improvement all over the case. Yeah. Every single team has been done dirty at some point. Vancouver, in particular, has been absolutely hosed.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the thing is every team was a victim of it at some point. but some teams had it worse than others.
Right. I don't think it's corrupt.
Sorry, go ahead.
I don't think it's corrupt. I don't think there's any sort of like shaping the league going on. Although in the heat of the moment during the first Cavalry Halifax game, I had seriously said that a certain penalty call was in fact on some Serie A shit. But that made but that's just how terrible it was rather than me thinking it was corruption.
I joked about that a bit. I think it's incompetence more than corruption.
Right. It's referee officiating is like the most important thing. It is just one of, if not the most important thing going on. I mean, they have, and when it's done poorly, the sport suffers.
Yeah.
And it ain't just us. I watch a certain team in the EPL, and some fan channels from a lot of EPL teams, and they're like, holy crap, Anthony, or holy crap, this ref is a joke. This ref is a joke. These refs don't know how to use VAR. These refs are, and so on and so on. And it doesn't seem like the usual getting irritated calls against us, because they come in with receipts.
Yeah.
You heard Clippity Clop with Tottenham. They had a good point about that botch. And the botch in the Arsenal Man City game. with Kovacic.
I think people seem to think that VAR is going to be some magic solution that's going to make the reffing better, and I'm not. The evidence from the EPL suggests that might not actually be the case.
VAR
got a
is
bit of an echo on the line.
Oh, VAR is a tool, and it can be and in theory at least, it's a very helpful tool. But but the tool is only as good as the tools that run it. So
yeah, I honestly think a simple step that would go a lot further to fix the officiating in the league is having head refs consult with their assistant referees before making a call.
And maybe their number 4s as well.
Yeah, because there's a couple of times this year where a quick check-in with the assistant ref would probably have resulted in the correct call, and it didn't happen. I think the only game we really saw that was our second away against Pacific. There was a couple of times where the head ref consulted with the assistant ref and overturned their own call.
And that actually turned out to be the right call.
Yeah.
Credit. Absolute credit. Absolute credit.
Yeah.
And there have been cases where we benefited from shenanigans calls too. Because there have been cases like that for every team. Like, there have definitely been times where we have gotten away with one, or we might have gotten away with one at least. I think the game against Vancouver, one of them, I mean, we still scored 2 others, but one of them, not the goal and the potential. Well, it was if the first goal that Morelli scored like 5 minutes in the first game, in the second home game against Vancouver, was chalked off, I'd be gutted, but I'd be like, you know what? That could have easily gone either way. That could have easily been called either way.
Yeah, room for improvement next year for sure.
Yeah. So all right, it's been an hour and 15 minutes. Is there anything else that can help? A little bit of extra time? Is there anything else that's somewhat relevant or that this would benefit from that we can talk about? Or can we call it a season?
No, I want to say Sorry, the echo's driving me a bit nuts here, but
I was really hoping it wouldn't echo like that. I don't hear a thing otherwise.
Yeah. Again, disappointing ending, but what a fantastic season, and I'm so optimistic about next year and what the squad might look like in a year's time, because I think the club got the most important decision right, which was who they hired as the head coach.
And the head coach
and everything else follows from that, right? So I think we built a structure and a platform and a culture for success, and we're only going to see bigger things next year.
I mean, and they're not afraid of they're not afraid of the inevitable time when things might get a little rough. I mean, Patrice Geyser has an outlook on that sort of thing that I look at and I think, oh, hey, where he's okay with it. He's okay with difficult times and adversity to the point where when I listen to some of the things he says, and I'm like, yo, hey, calm it down, fella. Whereas like where I begin to think like where I begin to wonder if he's gonna run the length of Portland Street one of these days in the dead of winter in like minus 10 degrees in his shorts and a tank top just because he's not afraid of it. But yeah, I'm really glad that Geyser's working things. I really, really am. That's why I made that banner. That's why I made that banner for my Twitter channel.
Yeah, love it.
It's a wonderful. I
think we're in a good place going forward.
So he has a wonderful attitude, and he has infected the club with a wonderful attitude that I hope endures. I think will endure. Here's hoping the next season is as good as the others, if is the other one. And and I guess I can. And I guess
come on, you Wanderers.
Come on, you Wanderers. See you in April.
Have a good night, Jordan. Thanks for having me on.
Have a good night, Derek. Thanks for coming on. It's a shame that I didn't manage to arrange an op preview or an op review this season like I did with Eddie Benhin. He was an amazing op guest after the second Halifax ATO game.
Oh yeah. It'd be good to get an op guest on.
Yeah, I'll see what I can do. Have a good one.
Right on.
I should have planned earlier and gotten a Pacific one for a preview.